Nations Championship Southern leg is done, folks. But how did the teams play? I've got my mind on the All Blacks South African series, which is coming up, and I feel like Dave Rennie's All Blacks, Rassie Erasmus' Springboks, played the game very differently in the Nations Championship, but they both got the same results in terms of going through undefeated. Let's have a look back at the Nations Championship, which is a pretty small sample size, but we'll have a look at the test matches and the stats they generated, which teams are playing which way, who's struggling with what, or who's leaning into what, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on how you think some upcoming test matches are going to go and how you think teams need to improve. I should say with the stats, there's not really a right or wrong way to play any rugby game. Ultimately, the main stat that matters is the score. It doesn't matter if you're playing high tempo, low tempo, high kicking, low passing, taking your chances, and you'd rather take your chances than miss them, but you need to generate those chances in the first place. There are a few stats which are like black and white, like you'd rather win lineouts than not win them, but yeah, a lot of them are kind of open for interpretation, and that's part of the reason I like the game so much, in that you can play it a totally different way from your opponent, and each way is kind of equally as valid. But we'll go through them pretty quick, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. What have I seen about Dave Rennie's All Blacks in particular, but also kind of the Scots as well, and maybe to a degree the Irish? These sides like high tempo. If you look at the sides who want ruck speed, which is 3 seconds or less, the ultimate fast ruck ball, don't let your defensive side have a chance to set, it's Scotland, New Zealand, Ireland, and France, followed not too far behind by Australia. They want quick ruck ball to capitalize on their opposition not being able to set. That is the DNA of their game, at least from what we've seen in the Nations Championship. South Africa at the other end, it's not a high value item for them. They are much more methodical in their approach. It doesn't rely on quick ruck ball. Now, perhaps unsurprisingly, the teams who like quick ruck ball tend to be the teams who also pass the ball the most. It is the biggest first impression that Dave Rennie's All Blacks had on me as an All Blacks fan, is the sheer amount of width they're looking to get in the game and the amount of touches they are looking for players to have. The wingers get a lot of touches in Dave Rennie's All Blacks. He likes so far to play dual playmakers at 10 and 15. They want many touches on the ball. Against Italy, and again, it's a pretty small sample size, so that one game really bumps up the stats. There was 300 plus passes in that game, but the All Blacks are looking to pass it kind of 250 odd times a game. The Scots, the Aussies, and the Argentinians, even the Irish, are kind of there or thereabouts to a degree as well. But again, at the other end of the scale, the Boks, with their less kind of high tempo ruck speed game, don't have to go through as many passes to get the same results. What is interesting is, though, the teams who are around the Boks, like Wales, Italy, not so much England, but Wales and Italy are teams who generally have less possession. So fewer passes is not necessarily by choice with them, although Wales, I think we've seen them use a fairly aggressive kind of kicking game as well. But yeah, the Boks are very much at that end of the scale compared to the All Blacks, as I said, who are looking to play the game in a very different way. Now, you would assume, maybe, that high tempo and high pass game leads to the most line breaks, and you would be right to a degree. If we look here, look, Scotland get the most line breaks. They had high tempo, high passing. So did the All Blacks. So did France. But look who's there at number 4. South Africa, despite having slower ruck speed and despite having fewer passes, are still able to generate a substantial amount of line breaks. Now, you don't need line breaks to win games. That's a stat you can kind of take or leave it. They're lovely to watch. They are genuinely X-factor attacking opportunities, which often lead to tries. You don't need to score tries that way, but the Boks being 4th, I think highlights that kind of many different ways to skin a cat in rugby. I think Ireland will be a bit disappointed with the lack of X-factor in their game in terms of the ability to break the line, because they are down there with Fiji, Italy, Japan, and Wales, who at times in this Nations Championship lacked a bit of that cutting edge. That's one that Andy Farrell, I don't think, will be too happy with. Now, if we look at a stat where New Zealand and Scotland are kind of towards the bottom, this is your pure kicks. How many kicks are teams putting through? Now, this is a This is a totaling of like grubbers and high balls and kicks for territory. So it's everything kind of lumped into one. But generally, how often are they looking to put boot to ball? The Boks are the number one proponent from the Nations Championship, which is a little bit of a change of roles because traditionally Borthwick's team has been the highest boot to ball team by quite some way. But that has shifted a little bit in this Nations Championship. Wales, I feel like, are at times kicking for territory when they are under pressure, but as I said, can have an aggressive offensive kicking game as well. And also it's something we saw a lot of in Japan. Like in Japan's win over Italy, we saw them use a lot of kind of kicks out to the Italian backfield under a heap of kind of kick pressure. So the All Blacks under Dave Rennie looking to put less boot to ball. Gregor Townsend's teams at times for Scotland have been, to a fault, unwilling to kick the ball. And then, as I said, there's a few other teams kind of there in the middle. France, fairly high-ish on their kicking stakes because they value, at times, I think, territory more than possession. And this one I like, meters per carry, because it kind of shows what you are doing with what you have been giving. Meters per carry is just taking how many carries did the team have and how many meters did they get on average per carry. The gold standard has generally been 4, although I feel like teams have dipped under 4 a wee bit in the last few years as defenses have been a bit stingier on conceding run meters, but there are some teams who crack that gold standard of 4 in this Nations Championship, and that's France, South Africa, and England. England and South Africa, who were those teams high on the kick, are still at the kind of gold standard in terms of how much offensive punch they are getting per carry. So it's not necessarily the amount of carries. Like the amount of carries, the All Blacks were the number one team by quite some way as well. Pure number of guys trucking the ball up. But the All Blacks are mid-table in terms of how much punch they get. So it's volume for the All Blacks, where it's more like quality with France, South Africa, and England. Wales would certainly like that number to be a bit higher. Wales and Japan, you feel like definitely lacked the general offensive punch, and it's reflected in the numbers. All right, so what about finishing? Actually finishing opportunities. Here on this graph, it's a little bit more to read. The bigger numbers, the taller towers, the columns, those are the 22 entries per game, and the smaller ones are the average points per 22 entry. So ideally, you want both of them to be high. You want lots of 22 entries, and you want to be converting those chances. The kind of interesting outliers here, you can see New Zealand and South Africa both have a pretty high amount of 22 entries per game, but their conversion rate, the smaller one, is not as high as some of the other teams. So the Boks and All Blacks are very good at creating opportunities, and the French, to be fair, but maybe not scoring as many points as they would have liked for all that effort of getting down the 22. But then you look at the Wallabies, their rate of entering the opposition 22 is actually, it's not that great, but their conversion rate is quite good. Like the Wallabies conversion rate, it's over 4. So every time the Wallabies get down the opposition end, they are much more likely to walk away with points than the other teams in this Nations Championship from what we've seen at the first part of it in 2026. The Italians are the absolute worst. That's been a problem since a wee while now. Gonzalo Casada, for all the good he's doing with Italian rugby, their conversion rate is dismal. And we can't just only do attacking stats. We need to look at a little bit of defensive stuff as well. You can look at some stuff like missed tackle counts, which I do think give you an indication of how well or not a team is defending, but it also can show you how they are defending. Like blitz defenses tend to miss loads of tackles, but the objective of the game was not necessarily to make the tackle, but at least to disrupt the play. So those ones can be a little bit deceptive. I still think there's value in them, but what I like here, this one we've got line breaks conceded and tries conceded. You don't want either of these to be high. You want both of these numbers to be low. One thing that I found pretty amazing is the Springboks numbers for line breaks conceded is exceptionally high, absolutely blown out by that Scotland game. Scotland had like 15 line breaks against the Boks in that game. They only had 1 against Wales, so it's buggered their average. But the Boks, despite having the highest number of line breaks conceded, have the lowest number of tries conceded in this Nations Championship. That is nuts. Those things should be going up together kind of 1-to-1, but they are not. That's a testament to their kind of scramble defense to be able to have their line broken and still not cough up any points. Fiji, they got beaten by 70 points against England. seemed to be a bit of an open door in comparison. They conceded a lot of points for the amount of line breaks that were scored against them. Like if you broke the line, there was a pretty good chance you were going to score, especially if you were playing for England in that second week. Now, the last one I want to go with is just kind of one that I've been curious about for a while. I wanted to see how long are matches taking. Like, are there certain teams whose games take longer than others? Like there's more stoppages, there's more guys going down for a tying of the shoelaces or a dodgy knee or other potential time-wasting reasons. Now, the tool I've used is kind of a blunt one, just to measure the time, but I've just looked at when was the game kicked off, when did they blow for half-time, when did they kick off in the second half, and when did they blow for full-time, and just chucking those numbers together. So it's a pretty blunt tool, and I think what we've found is there's a lot of influence from the TMO and cards on the length of games. Like, no surprises. Which game do you think was the longest run game of all the ones in the Nations Championship? It was the 7 yellow card affair with a potential winning try at the death between Argentina and England. So that game has blown out England's time by a lot, and also the fact that England played Fiji in a match which had water breaks. So if we're including everything between whistle to whistle, water breaks are included. So England's matches took on average the longest. The All Blacks-Irish game was also a pretty lengthy one, so that's bumped up both their averages a wee bit. And interestingly, France, South Africa, Scotland, their matches were all pretty quick. I feel like South Africa gets a little bit of stick for, as I said, the slow ruck and whatnot, but that doesn't make for a long game, necessarily. The game can still keep moving, even if the ball is at the bottom of a ruck for a couple of seconds longer. There's not necessarily a one-to-one connection between those things. But yeah, that's it. I like having a look at some stats. There's been less rugby on, with the Nations Championship coming to an end and the All Blacks tour of South Africa not starting yet. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know your thoughts. What other stats do you think might be pertinent? And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.